Hello to all of my 300 plus colleagues dialing in from all around the world. International Women's Day is a global day celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity, which we know is critically important not only for our organization, but in broader society. The World Economic Forum shares with us that globally, gender parity stands at about 68.6%, and the bottom 10 countries have closed just 40% of the gender gap. In terms of economic participation, the gender gap will take 257 years to close, and this compares to 202 years as stated in their 2019 report. So International Women's Day 2021, the campaign theme is Choose to Challenge. A challenged world is an alert world. Individually, we're all responsible for our own thoughts and actions, all day, every day. We can choose the challenge to call out gender bias and inequity. We can choose to seek out and celebrate women's achievements. Collectively, we can all help to create an inclusive world. And that's why you joining us today and the session and the discussion that we're about to have is so important. So I would like to welcome, as part of this session, Jerry Greco, who is our Takeda executive team member and our chief quality officer, and our external speaker, Rana el Kaliouby, who is the co-founder and CEO of Effectiva. She's also an entrepreneur in the field of expression recognition research, and I love that she also introduces herself as a mom. So to start off the session, perhaps I would invite Rana, first of all, to share a bit more with you about herself. And then we will have a broader discussion both with Rana and also with Jerry. As you know, you have the opportunity to put your questions in Slido as Rana is speaking, as Jerry is speaking, and we're going to have a bit of a discussion between the three of us using your questions as well. So Rana, a very warm welcome from Takeda, and I'd like to hand over to you now.
Hi, Nicola. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Takeda, for hosting me today. Happy International Women's Day, everybody, from wherever you are tuned in from. I am currently in Boston, where it's still very cold, but thankfully a sunny day. I love the theme of International Women's Day this year, Choose to Challenge. And I would say that a big portion of my career has been challenging cultural norms, societal norms, even our approach to technology and how we build it and how we deploy it around the world. So a little bit about myself. I'm originally Egyptian. I grew up around the Middle East, first in Egypt and then in Kuwait and Abu Dhabi. Both my parents are in technology, so from very early on, I was introduced to the latest and greatest devices, and studied computer science as an undergraduate and was so inspired by how technology can change the way we connect and communicate with one another, and that's been a common thread throughout my career. After my undergraduate, I decided to do a PhD in computer science, specializing in building the first ever emotionally intelligent machine. You might know that 90% of how we communicate is nonverbal. It's split between our facial expressions, our hand gestures, our vocal intonations. Only 10% of our communication is based on the exact choice of words we use. And so all of this nonverbal signals, right, that really affect how we build empathy and show empathy and build trust and loyalty, all of these signals are often lost when we communicate digitally. So I've been on this mission to humanize technology, to bring emotional intelligence and social intelligence and empathy into how we design the technologies and the devices that have become so deeply ingrained, not just in how we connect with tech, but also how we ultimately connect with one another. After Cambridge, my kind of career aspiration was to become faculty, and so I joined MIT Media Lab as a postdoc in the affective computing group. So we were on a mission to bring emotion recognition to technology and build devices that can not only understand your emotions, but can adapt to it in real time. And being at MIT the first few years, we were always bombarded by companies that wanted to license our technology. And it was so interesting because at the time I was focused on autism. So the core technology essentially uses any camera sensor on your device, and it could be your phone, could be your laptop, could be a TV, could be in the car, and it's able to quantify your facial expressions, and it maps them to a number of emotional states. For example, are you tired? Are you interested? Are you happy? Are you sad? At the time, we were wrapping all of that into a Google-like device, Google Glass-like device that had a little camera, and the kids on the autism spectrum would use the device to get real-time feedback on the emotions and social cues of the people they were interacting with. So it was a really grand and ambitious project, and we were partnered with a number of schools to deploy this technology. But at the time, being at MIT, we were very closely tied to our industry sponsors, and twice a year, all of these companies would come to the lab, and it was an opportunity to showcase what we were building. In fact, we called it demo or die. So we would, you know, I would showcase this autism work, but very quickly we would get all these companies like, you know, Procter & Gamble wanted to test their latest products. Bank of America wanted to quantify customer experience. Toyota wanted to measure when their drivers were tired or fatigued or drowsy or distracted, of course. So the list went on, and I literally just kept a log of all of these different applications. And when the list got to about 20, I realized we have a commercial opportunity here, and that provided the impetus for spinning Affectiva out of the Media Lab at MIT. So this was in 2009. We've been on this mission to humanize technology. It's honestly been like an emotional roller coaster because we were challenging the status quo in a number of ways, and I'll give a few examples around that. But it's also been an incredible journey to bring AI to the world at scale in a very ethical and disciplined and principled way. So a few stories there. When we first spun out of MIT, my co-founder is an MIT professor. Her name is Rosalind Picard, and she's also my role model and mentor. I had read her book way back when I was in Egypt in 1998, and I was so inspired by her work and only got to meet her in person in 2005 towards the end of my PhD. It was a very serendipitous meeting because she was giving a talk at Cambridge, UK, and I said, you know, had the opportunity to meet her, and she invited me to join her as a postdoc at MIT. So we ended up co-founding Affectiva together, and we did the first rounds of investment because it was just the two of us pitching to investors, particularly in the Bay Area. There's this big strip, it's called Sand Hill Road, where there are venture capitalists back to back. All their offices are stacked back to back. And so we flew out from Boston to the Bay Area, and we had all of these meetings lined up. And I just want you to picture this. So two women, scientists coming out of academia, right? We had raised millions of dollars of funding for MIT, but we hadn't done it in the context of a business before. And at the time, I'm Muslim, so at the time I used to wear the hijab, so I was very clearly, clearly Muslim. And the two of us were pitching an emotion company, so much so that in our very original pitch decks, we avoided using the word emotion, the E word. Our company's name is called Affectiva. Affect is a synonym for emotion, but it's less feminine and a little bit broader. But we really avoided using the word emotion in our pitch decks because we realized that all of these investors we were pitching, who are, of course, older white males, we just looked very different from what they were used to seeing being pitched to them. So we were very cognizant of that, and it was really hard. I mean, what happened is we always were able to get the meetings we wanted to because of our credibility and our connections with MIT. I would also say we always walked in with a lot of passion and a lot of conviction, and we had our demos in our hands, and people were always super fascinated by the technology, but still, it was such a big risk to invest in us. But if there's one thing I learned from Roz and just seeing how she operates, it's perseverance. So we persevered, and we have to date raised over $53 million of venture and strategic funding. 2 years ago, I went out and raised an additional $26 million of capital. And once again, I realized it hit me that we hadn't made all that much progress in the investment community. I must have had 50 or so meetings, and of all of the meetings, only 2 had women in there. And so, that kind of reignited my passion for supporting more female founders in technology, but also more female investors. So I'm part of an organization called All Raise. I encourage you all to check it out. It's incredible. It's primarily operates in the U.S., but I'm sure there are similar organizations worldwide. And we've created this community of incredible female founders, but we also match them with female investors and support kind of both threads, because we need more women around the entire ecosystem. One more on this pitching story. So at the time, my daughter was probably 6 years old, Jenna. She's now 17 when we first spun out, and I had just had my son. So when we did the Sandhill Roadshow in the Bay Area, Adam was maybe 6 to 8 months old. And I remember I had lined up a babysitter in the Bay Area, and she would take him every day. But one morning she called me and said, "Hey, listen, I'm not feeling well. I can't take him." And I was like, "What do you mean you can't take him? I don't know anybody in this city." She was like, "I'm sorry, I can't take him." So I had a decision. I could either just cancel the meeting, but of course we had spent months lining up these investment pitches, or take Adam with me. And so I did exactly that. I plopped him in a car seat, took him with me, walked into the investor office, and there was this, nice-looking young woman sitting by the front desk, and I was like, "Here, take the baby. I promise you he's great." And I just, went in, did my pitch, and just kind of prayed to the universe that he doesn't kind of, scream his head off. He was always a good baby, thankfully. But it also hit me how I had to reconcile very quickly being a mom and being an entrepreneur and a founder. And so that story has stuck with me. And of course, there are many flavors of it over the year where I've had to kind of balance the two, and also kind of be a role model for my children as they grow up. And they often overhear me and having work conversations as I'm driving them to their squash practice or their other activities. And I would use it as an opportunity to then get their feedback. And they'll often say, "Mom, you were really mean on this call," or, "Why did you say this?" or "What do you mean by that?" And I find that it provides just incredible opportunity to share some of my experiences and have them be part of this journey that's front and central, of course, to my life. Affectiva is like my third child, really. So we spun out. We are in a number of different business units or focused on a number of different industries. Of course, the vision here is that one day in the future, this is going to be the default human-machine interface. We're already seeing it with devices like Amazon Alexa and Siri and Google Home, where we're seeing a lot more conversational interfaces. The next evolution of that is to add perceptual abilities, computer vision, so that these devices can both have ears and eyes. And it unlocks a lot of different opportunities. As I said, we started with autism. There's a lot of applications in understanding how people engage with content. In automotive, we're spending a lot of time trying to reimagine what the future of mobility does and how could you have a system in the vehicle that has your back, right, that can help you if you're frustrated, if you're falling asleep, if you're distracted, to ensure that you have a safer and more comfortable ride. So that's a really interesting area. And of course, it overlaps largely with wellness. And we spend a lot of time thinking about how that applies to automotive, but I'm also very passionate about the application of this technology in mental health. We know that there are facial and vocal biomarkers of things like depression and anxiety, even suicidal intent, Parkinson's, and more. So how can we use the fact that we're spending so much time in front of our devices to be able to then quantify in a very systematic and longitudinal way a person's mental health state and be able to get them help? And that help could be, there's a range, of course, of solutions. It could be everything from just letting the person know that, you know, this is your baseline, but you've kind of deviated from your baseline over the last few weeks. Here are some things you could do, to informing, you know, of course, with the person's consent, a loved one, or maybe a doctor or physician, a therapist. You could even have conversational interfaces or chatbots that could provide some support. So the space of possibilities, once you have that data quantifiable and objective, is just amazing. And it's an area that I'm very interested in exploring. Also, just in the past year with the pandemic, and of course, all of us migrating to communicating almost exclusively on digital platforms, has brought front and center what this technology can do. So, you know, for example, here I am, I'm with you all, and, you know, we're together in this shared virtual experience. There's, you know, almost 370 people tuned in, but I can't see your faces. If we were all in the same big auditorium, I could get a sense of the energy in the room, and I could adapt my message in real time. It's so hard to do that on virtual platforms like this. So I keep imagining, well, if Emotion AI was integrated into these platforms, and with your permission, of course, the camera could provide me, or the system could provide me, with an aggregated curve of everybody's response, level of engagement, level of attention, level of excitement. If I say something funny, do you all laugh or not, right? So I think we're going to see a lot of innovation incorporating this type of empathetic technology into the ways we connect and communicate, into how we engage with our customers, and optimize and personalize the user experience and the customer experience, but also how we connect with our employees. I mean, you know, Takeda is a very global organization. As a leadership team, or as you manage your teams who are geographically distributed, how do you get a sense if people are motivated, if they're really stressed, if they're really engaged, if they're being productive? And again, some of these technologies that can quantify behavior for the first time ever can help bring people together in really new and exciting ways. I want to share a few more kind of personal stories and struggles along the way. And one of them really kind of is along the theme of speaking up and choosing to challenge. So when we first spun out of MIT, I took the role of Chief Technology Officer. Roz, my co-founder, was a tenured professor at MIT, so she never left MIT, but we decided to hire a seasoned business executive to run the company. And so we brought him on board. He was the CEO for the first 4 or so years, and then he decided to move on. And the question became, all right, who should be the next CEO? And a few members of our board said, well, Rana should be. It's her baby, you know, it's her technology. And I remember thinking, I've never been CEO before. I don't want to fail. And so I didn't raise my hand. At the same time, our head of sales, who had only been with the company for about a year or so, he said, sure, I'll do it. And he became the CEO in 2013. Fast forward a couple more years, I was flying back from giving a TED Talk, and I Googled, you know, what are the roles and responsibilities of a CEO? And I literally created a bulleted list. And as I was writing it down, I realized that I was already doing a big part of the job. I was the face of the company. I was lining up potential investors and partners and customers. I was very involved in the product and go-to-market strategy, the financing, all of it, right? And I feel like it had to take me switching my own mindset and believing first in myself so that I could then go. I talked to him, the CEO at the time, first, and then we took that to the board, and it was a unanimous vote for me to step into the CEO role. That was in 2016. And it made me realize that for many, many years, I was my own biggest obstacle. I was the big Debbie Downer voice in my head that prevented me from taking on opportunities. And unfortunately, I see that with people on my team, majority women, unfortunately, where women, wait to check 100% of the criteria for an opportunity or a job, whereas men are more willing to take risks and kind of believe in themselves. So my advice to you all is not to do that. Believe in yourself, have confidence, and you know what? Support yourself with almost like a personal board of advisors. For me, what helped me through this transition from CTO to CEO, I had a couple of mentors who literally nudged me every time we connected to visualize what it would be like to be the CEO. So I went from not believing to like having a vision of, okay, this is how it's going to work out if this were to happen. And that was really key and really transformative to my experience to overcome a lot of these doubts. So do support yourself by, with a number of mentors and cheerleaders who have your back and nudge you to take on these exciting new opportunities. I will end with one more story around technology stewardship. I feel very passionately that all of us as thought leaders and as professionals on the forefront of this new world of AI that is becoming mainstream, that is, taking on roles that were traditionally done by humans, like helping with our healthcare and assisting with our productivity and giving us advice on how to be happier and better individuals. We are at the forefront of creating this world, and I feel very passionately that we have to do it the right way. So when we spun out of Affectiva, out of MIT, we created a number of core values around how we wanted to build and deploy this technology. We talk about the ethical development, but also the ethical deployment of AI. The ethical development primarily has to do with making sure that the technology is not biased. And that, pragmatically means a lot of things. First, ensuring that the data itself that we use to train the machine learning algorithms is not biased, but also how you evaluate these algorithms. You have to be very sophisticated around what type of data you use to validate and what kind of criteria you look at to validate. But honestly, the most important criteria of all to mitigate against algorithmic bias is to ensure that the team around the table designing these technologies is diverse and is inclusive, right? It's no good having a diverse team if people don't feel like they can choose the challenge, right? If they don't have a voice. So thinking about diversity, thinking about inclusivity, but also equity. We're very fortunate in that we're based in Boston. We have access to incredible talent, but we've made it our mission to tap into talent where you don't, where people wouldn't come to us because they wouldn't think they'd be eligible. And so we've been pretty thoughtful about how we tap into the up-and-coming talent and next generation of AI leaders. On the deployment side, it's really important to acknowledge factors such as opt-in, consent. Think about what are we as users getting in return for sharing this very personal data. And so we've turned down millions and millions and millions of dollars of funding, primarily companies or organizations that wanted to take our technology and deploy it in security and surveillance applications. I feel that the technology is definitely not there, regulation is definitely not there, and so we have steered away from that. And that all comes back to my belief that we need to be stewards of the technologies we are building and not just think of our customers or, this limited scope of stakeholders, but think of society as our ultimate stakeholders and ask challenging questions and partner with organizations that will poke holes at what you're doing. We are part of the Partnership on AI Consortium, started by the big tech giants, but there's also Amnesty International and ACLU as part of these organizations, and they definitely challenge us on how to do this right. So choose to challenge. And I'll stop here and see if we have any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rana. I mean, we spoke before. I've been listening to your book and just listening to you again. You know, I just say, wow, I don't even know where to begin. But I know we have some questions coming in, and I want to turn to Jerry. But before I turn to Jerry, maybe I ask you one more question. It's really interesting for me, and in your book you describe yourself as a good Egyptian girl, right? But as a good Egyptian girl, even so, you've been challenging boundaries and stereotypes. You know, your ambition is bold, right? It's this mission you have to humanize technology. Yet it's interesting for me that when it came time for the CEO role, you hesitated, and actually you didn't raise your hand. When you finally did, what was it? What was the trigger for you in determining now is the time? Because I know you said there were many voices, but, you know, perhaps there's a trigger point. What was that?
You know, it came back to our mission. We, at the time, were very focused on, we spun out with this mission to humanize technology so that we reimagine what a human-machine interface looks like, but more importantly, to reimagine human-to-human connections in a digital world. And I had felt that we had veered away from that mission. We were very focused on deploying our technology in the advertising research space. And that was the background of the CEO at the time. And we just were missing the mark. And so for me, it was this deep conviction that I'm still on this mission. I still believe in what we're trying to do, but we had lost almost our path a little bit. And that was the tipping point.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. So, Jerry, I would like to bring you in here because I think, you know, all over our organization and in other organizations, I'm sure there are women or individuals everywhere, perhaps with that kind of passion, drive, determination, the hard work, but perhaps lacking in that confidence to move forward or being their own biggest barrier, as Rana described it. But one of the things that I've noted, Jerry, is your leadership team is actually quite diverse. You've got quite a number of women. So when you think about, what Rana's described, what many people are experiencing, yet here you are with this great level of diversity, what does the theme choose to challenge mean to you?
Well, thanks, Nicola, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today to celebrate Women's Day. And I really enjoyed listening to Rana's story as well. It's great just to hear different perspectives about how people on different journeys, and really very inspiring. So thank you. Yeah, Nicola, you touched on my leadership team, and actually it is quite diverse. In fact, on my leadership team, I have 12 women on the team and 5 men, representing 9 different countries. So we have quite a mix. And it's really the mix that I find to be the most valuable, the different perspectives, the different experiences. We have really a terrific team. And I think one of the things that really works well for us is we establish norms for our team that we've agreed to and that we work within. And that creates kind of a safe place for us. 2 of the norms that are quite important relative to this topic are that we really have each other's backs. We need to trust and be transparent in our communications. And a second norm is more about listening, providing feedback. When we reach a decision, we align on that decision and we speak with one voice. So we've tried to create an environment of safety, of really not taking things personally, putting things on the table, and not being afraid to be rejected or embarrassed by any comments. I really try to focus on that as a leader. I really try to make sure that I create the environment to encourage people to speak what's on their mind. I expect that. I expect that our leaders will come forward with their ideas. I'm not surprised when I'm challenged as a leader, and I think that's really important. That should be an expectation, and I think it's kind of a recipe for success on my team. We've also looked very carefully to understand each other's personalities on the team. We recently went through an exercise called the Insights Profile, where we learned about each other's preferences and personality styles. So even though we have a great diversity in terms of gender and nationalities, we also have different personalities, and we really try to understand each other, understand where we're coming from, and how we can connect better with the different people on the team. So it's been quite an interesting journey. I think really it's all about being empathetic too, and really putting yourself in the place as a leader of the people on your team and creating that environment. Try to do that through really having feedback and asking for feedback, and I think it's quite a unique situation. Yeah. Thanks, Nicola.
No, but thank you for sharing that, Jerry, because one of the topics that often comes up is around this concept of psychological safety, right? Where people actually feel that the team will not embarrass or reject or punish them for speaking up. And you've just described, I suppose, the things that you've done to really try to create the conditions for people to speak up in your team. And I have another one for you because I know a little bit about your career history, Jerry, and it struck me that throughout your career, you've had a lot of female bosses, right, actually, and you've told me before, you've worked in teams that have been actually quite female-dominated. And I'm wondering how that has shaped your perspective and your ability to see what needs to be challenged.
Yeah, it's a great. I kind of have a bit of a unique background. So in the pharmaceutical industry, I'm a microbiologist. Microbiology is primarily dominated by females, where in the chemistry laboratory it's usually males. And I've also worked at, I think, very diverse companies. I started my career at Johnson & Johnson, was very much on the forefront of diversity, equity, and inclusion many years ago. I really got a great foundation there. When I first started, my first job when I came out of college at Johnson & Johnson, I joined the microbiology laboratory, and there were 20 women in the laboratory, and I was the only man. So they were quite interested when I showed up. And it was really an eye-opening experience. I learned so much about women during those first few years that it was just amazing, and I think it really helped me throughout my career. I've also had, I reported to Christoph for the last about 7 years now. Coming up in September will be 7 years. But prior to that, I've had 9 out of my last 10 bosses in my career have been females. And I've learned from each of them, and I've learned their challenges, their struggles. They're all different, obviously, but they all are incredibly hardworking. And really, I've learned a lot about balancing family, work and family, your work life, your family life. One of my first bosses actually was in a job share situation. I had two ladies that worked together as one job, and I learned to work with both of them at the same time, and it was a great experience. They worked incredibly hard to balance their family, and I always found that to be really, really important. It guides me. I've always looked for trying to create that balance, and I think it's really, the foundation where you start and how you can grow and continue to learn, I know for myself has really helped me professionally and personally.
Yeah, and actually I'll bring Rana back in. Rana, someone here in the question, she said, I loved your story about taking your baby to the investor meetings, right? Clearly you needed to balance motherhood and being a successful entrepreneur. What are your main tips for success? And I bring that in because Jerry was just talking about himself learning, about what some of those challenges are and how to deal with it. Now he's in a leadership role. So what can you share, Rana?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to really applaud Jerry. These are all super inspiring stories, and we just need more people and more male allies like you who are committed to just supporting women. It's pretty awesome. And I want to comment also on something you said that really resonates with me, and that is the role that empathy plays in leadership, especially in the last year with the pandemic. I think empathetic leadership has become front and center because, we're communicating with each other on a digital platform like this one, and you don't really know what's going on in a person's life unless you make the time to really understand that and put yourself in their shoe. And so we've been really trying to kind of advocate for this type of empathetic leadership, especially in the last year, but leading with empathy first. And then, being assertive and decisive and all of these other cool elements of being a leader. I think it's just so important because it builds this authentic human connection, and it allows people to build trust and feel safe, as you said, Nicola. So, yay to empathetic leadership. And thank you, Jerry, for sharing all of these stories. For me, kind of some of the ingredients, I guess, that I try to use in how I lead, or how I try to integrate the different kind of facets and hats that I have to wear. First is, again, back to like prioritizing human connection. I think that's really important to me, and it's where I've been doing a lot of paying it forward too, and I feel like that just brings a lot of meaning to the work I do. So that's one. Second is this element of learning. I do feel that I'm on this journey with my team and almost with the world to learn about how to build this technology, but how to also be a better leader and a better human being. And so learning is one of our core values at Affectiva. And then the third, and maybe kind of also equally important, is how to manage that inner voice of doubt in my head. And it starts with self-care. It's something that I didn't do earlier in my career. I always came last, always, my kids, my family, the company, everything else really other than me. And now I know that it's important to prioritize self-care. And so on my calendar that everybody at the company sees, there are blocks of time where I say I'm in Zumba class. Everybody knows that. Nobody's allowed to schedule on top of my Zumba class. And I think it sets the right message for the rest of the team. It gives everybody else permission, because people look, people kind of emulate what the leaders of a company do. That's how you kind of incorporate culture or encode culture in our organization. And I wanted to show others and on the team that, you need to take care of yourself, your physical self, your mental self, So that's important. And then I also journal, and journaling is an incredible way to celebrate successes, express my emotions, again, in a very safe way, and also have rebuttals with that doubting voice in my head. Challenge it. I challenge that voice in my head.
So choose the challenge is also challenging that voice in your head, as you said, Rana. But, I love Aisha's question because, look, I remember being there, right? When you have to juggle the kids and juggle work and actually juggle some of the assumptions. You're trying so hard to balance it all, and some of the assumptions, incorrectly often, that people make about you and your work and your commitment to work. And I certainly remember where a massive achievement for me was when I got my kids were old enough, or I got to the point where I could actually have coffee before I left the house in the morning, and not just the coffee from the train station. And then the second milestone came where I could put on some eyeliner, not just rushing into the first bathroom in the office, because that's it after you've run to catch the train. But I will say to Aisha and anybody else, it's also phases. And one of the things that was important to me was the support network, knowing those people that you could call on who can even just help you silence the voices in your head. And the things that I used to say to my kids, I think when the doctors give you the baby, they give you a big portion of guilt that you walk, so you're always guilty. You're guilty because you spent too much time, not enough time, but find that network of people who can help you manage those voices and that doubt. So thank you for that. And I do want to pick up. I saw a question here and talking about supporting women. And actually, it's a question for both you and Jerry. So the one specifically to you, Helen's saying, very interesting. She also studied computer science. She was the only female in the course, on her course 20 years ago. And so great to hear what you're doing, Rana, to break down barriers and gender perceptions in technology. And what can we do to support more women? And I posed that question to you, but equally to Jerry, because, I think about our functions, but if you think across Takeda, you think about the importance that digital and data and technology will play in our discovery of medicines and manufacture and commercialization, if we don't have enough women coming through in those fields, what can we do to support, or even women who are here, Jerry, already, who may want to add those skills so that they are relevant for going forward. So Rana, maybe I come to you first and then to Jerry.
I'll start with some kind of pragmatic, tactical things that we've tried to incorporate at Affectiva. So first of all, if you are in a position of leadership, make sure that you are supporting or, standing for diversity. And again, like Jerry said, it's not just diversity from a gender perspective or an ethnic perspective, but even diversity of age, right? Like we have a very robust internship program where we bring high school kids over the summer and we engage them in conversations and actual hands-on projects on how to build AI that is ethical and, that helps society at large. So diversity on all sorts of perspectives, age, ethnicity, gender, background. You don't have to have a technical background to participate in, obviously, where technology is going. Second, and we do that a lot, we have a lot of kind of alpha personalities. Jerry, again, you talked about the insights profiles. We have a lot of loud people on our team. And we've taken it upon ourselves that if a woman on the team gets cut off, I will literally stop the meeting and I'll say, oh, wait, Tanya, what were you saying? Oh, hang on, I wanted to hear what Gabby has to say. And we now do it, we now support each other that way to make sure that we are allowing space for the women on our team to share their perspective. I'll also do kind of behind the scene nudges. We have, again, young women on our team, and sometimes, especially in these big meetings where everybody's trying to have some airtime, I will nudge kind of behind the scenes and I'll say, Ashley, I know you have these great ideas. Make sure to bring them up. I'm going to call on you. So little things like that, but over time they add up and it becomes a very inclusive culture. And then more broadly, just the ecosystem. Oh my goodness, we need more female leaders across the board on boards. And that's something I'm really, again, committing to doing, just bringing, more women on board, more female founders, more female investors, and mentoring the next generation of leaders in the space. I'm curious what you all are doing at Takeda, though. You're obviously at a much larger scale than we are.
Yeah, great comments, Rana. I think it was interesting. Nicola had really a great definition of DE&I, which has really stuck with me. She refers to D as diversity is the mix, right? And the E is the equity, is the barriers that we need to remove as leaders that might limit the effectiveness of the mix and really they get in the way. And then the inclusion part is making the mix work. And I think as leaders, what I'm trying to focus on is the E and the I, to reduce the barriers, to create flexibility, with our teams. There are some situations where if you know the person that reports to you and they have special commitments or they need to be with their family at certain times of the day, you can adjust your schedule and have meetings at different times. You try to create the right space so that the people can have that, to reduce those barriers. You don't want to impose rules that aren't necessary. You need some flexibility there. And then in terms of making the mix work well, I think a lot of what I try to focus on with my team is our talent management, our succession planning processes. We're trying to look at different pools of talent to really think outside of the box as well, in particular, as Nicola said, with all of this digital coming at us. And some people just don't know what's available. We need to create opportunities and really look at talent in a different way, not be persuaded by maybe the box that we think somebody is in, but really look at the potential that where can they be in the next few years, and what are these jobs going to look like in the future? They're going to be much different. We need to start thinking ahead in terms of our talent and really the type of opportunities. And it could be a bit challenging to do that, but it's certainly worth it. And I think the more that we can think broadly and really engage and question and ask people what they'd like to do. I was thinking, Ron, on your comment as well about people speaking up. We also have challenges with people that perhaps their English isn't their first language. So to draw out from them and to ask them questions and to make them feel comfortable It really, when you do that, I think you create that environment where people feel safe. And I think as leaders, at least what's important for me is, in terms of making the mix work, is creating that environment where people can thrive and feel safe and really maximize their potential.
Yeah.
Nicola, can we ask that question?
Sorry, go ahead.
Can we ask
go ahead,
that? Can we ask you to answer that question too?
Oh, for me?
Yes. I'm taking notes, so learning here.
Yeah. Okay, from my perspective, and I'm sorry, I went on to another question, so I'm just making sure that I have the question that you asked, right? What can we do to support more women? I agree with the points that you've made. I love the points that you raised, Rana, particularly about nudges behind the scenes and understanding, where people are, seeing their strengths. I think a lot of people just want to be seen and sometimes just need that encouragement to step forward. So I think what we can do more is to see people, see them for who they are, see them for their potential, as Jerry said, and find ways to encourage people to take that step and to support them. I'll give you an example of, someone that I work with, and, I really wanted her to step forward and do something quite bold with quite a big audience. And I knew that it was quite soon for her, but we talked about it. And I said, I'm here for you to practice, to rehearse. And also, by the way, when we get into the live event, if you get stuck, you just say, so Nicola, just hand over to me like if it was natural and like if that's what we planned. She didn't need to hand over to me at all. But actually what she needed to know was that I was there and that she had a safety net. And for me, it's been incredible to watch her grow from that experience and to flourish. And I do think that a company of Takeda's size, that we have even more to do to reach back out into society and to go earlier into the talent pipeline and to start working with colleges and schools and really also showcasing the women we have here that are doing fantastic things in these fairs, and showcasing even people like yourself, Rana, because I think it's when girls can see themselves in the future, it helps with what they aspire to and what they see as the possibilities. So thank you for taking my thoughts in that too. Okay, Kitaki, so we've got some other questions for you. I realize that we're almost out of time already, but lots of people are interested in your work, Rana, your specific technology. So Kate Keith basically said, I love that your work is to humanize technology. And as I imagine, this is in the future when technology has learned about human emotions and is displaying it. What do you imagine will be the role that humans will need to play?
That's a great one. So I don't see it as humans versus machines. So I don't think, when we have emotion AI is going to take over and it'll minimize the role of humans. I think it's a partnership. We're seeing that across the board, whether you are in health where doctors can partner with these digital platforms to get longitudinal data about their patients that enables them to make better decisions. We're partnered with a social robotics company, Catalia Health. They send social robots with some of their, some of the terminally ill patients. And the robot's job is to maintain this day-to-day super high touch points with the patient at home, and then only call in a doctor or a nurse when it's needed, right? Because we can't send a nurse with every patient home. So I really think of it as a partnership, and I think it unlocks a lot of potential and opportunity to free up, resources for, physicians and clinicians and therapists and other workers in the health space to really focus on the patient and the patient outcomes.
Mm. And actually, there is so thank you for that. And there is a similar question actually from Heather. And she says, your work is so relevant now due to COVID. And I think, this is where you were describing, here we are in this virtual environment. And I guess, for me, for example, I get my energy off of people, right? Typical extrovert. And I don't know how anyone is feeling. And you were describing how we might be able to get, just people's faces quantified or their expressions quantified, and we get some sort of reading. So Heather's saying, do you have any recommendations to push through scenarios you referenced in which you sense you're not connecting with your audience as a presenter due to the live connection gap? So
yeah, I mean, honestly, I've been, yes, the answer is yes. So my book launched last April, right when we were all kind of getting used to working from home, and I had to pivot from doing a live book tour to a virtual book tour where I did a lot of these kind of virtual events. And it was honestly unsettling at the beginning because it's so hard to maintain this empathetic connection when you don't see the nonverbals. It's really hard, no matter how many, comments people put in the chat box. It's so different than being able to riff off of the real energy that an audience brings to a conversation. And that also affects the sense of a shared experience, even for audience members. Again, we have almost 400 people on this call. It's really hard to recreate that sense of a shared experience that people get when we're all in the same location. But to me, that just speaks to the room and the innovation that we're going to see over the next few years on a lot of these platforms, because this isn't going to go away. Hopefully, post-COVID, yes, we're going to be seeing more of each other. but what this has unlocked is an event like this where I can be home but present to, folks from all over the world. That's powerful, but we need to upgrade how we do that. Like right now, I feel like we've got the quantity nailed down in terms of how we connect with, thousands of people worldwide, but the quality of the connection is still pretty coarse in my opinion, and we can do better. So I'm excited. I'm seeing that as an opportunity for innovation, and maybe somebody who's tuned in has ideas, reach out if you do.
That's an invitation. Ava Maria asked a question here, and actually it's a question to you, Rana, but I have a similar one to Jerry as well. So she says, hi, Rana, very often younger female leaders think they need to be overly perfect to be ready for the next career step. What do you do to challenge female leaders and strengthen their confidence in themselves?
Yeah, honestly, it's a conversation, and it's not just one conversation. It's having these multiple conversations where you can break it down, where you can show that, you're already doing some flavor of this already in your job in the following 3 ways. I also think the power of visualization can be great, kind of play it out, simulate it. I'm a technologist at heart, so simulate what this would look like. Also talk about how could it go wrong? Like, let's put the worst case scenario out there and internalize that and then move on from that. I think that's helped me a lot in how I mentor younger women. There's one case in particular. I had the head of research on my team is very committed to and very passionate about kind of mentoring the next generation of leaders. And I was having this conversation with her, someday when I'm, in the future, I'm going to start my own company to mentor young kids. And I was like, okay, Tanya, why not now? And it was a surprise, right? She had never thought that she could do it right at the moment. She felt like she needed years and years and years of practice. And I was like, no, you're already leading teams. You're already evangelizing this. You're super passionate about it. And I kind of helped her go through that motion. And it's been almost a year now. She spun out her company and she's doing great. She's on that roller coaster now, but I take pride in that. And And it just needed kind of nudging along the way for her to believe that she could do it and not wait forever.
Yeah. Jerry, what do you do?
Well, I like the idea of mentorship very much. I think it's really, really important that that people have someone that they can look up to, that has been through their journey and can share the good and the things that didn't work so well, and to help build confidence. It's all about confidence, I think. As Rana said, asking the question, why not? I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen if you don't take this opportunity? So I'm very much supportive of mentorship. In fact, with my team, we're looking to make sure that for our, at least for our high potential talent, those that we see have a great future ahead of them, that we assign some mentors, and we try to drive that mentorship down in the organization. I think it's really, really important to have an advocate, a sponsor, somebody that that's influential, that can help someone and guide them through their journey.
Yeah, and actually, it's a great question for me to share one bit before we start wrapping up. Today I'm usually a very proud mom anyway, but today my daughter starts her very first job, and I said to her, wonderful, you'll always remember it was on International Women's Day. So she's just graduated from university or college. And of course, she was having her first day jitters, first day nerves over the weekend. And my advice to her, which is what I give to anyone, is this is also a journey of learning. If you're ever in a role that you're doing perfectly, then you've been in that role too long. And I said to her, you go in and you're going to give a lot to the organization, but you're also going to be learning. And some things will work and some things will not work. And you will change bosses, and the same thing you've been doing, they have different ways of the different expectations and different requirements from you. So my key message to her was one of learning. And we talk about a growth mindset, a learning mindset, and that would be my key area of encouragement. So in the couple of minutes that we have, maybe I will end with Carla's comments, right? So Carla said, happy IWD, looking forward to 2 days full of learning, camaraderie, and choose to challenge. Thank you for your leadership and for making a positive impact on women and allies across Takeda. So I would like to thank all of the men and women who have dialed in today. I want to thank you because clearly you believe that this is an important agenda and you're part of the group that really wants to challenge, and to those of you who will be listening to the recordings later on. To Rana, our external speaker, I would say, what a fantastic ambition, mission you have. I think there are some similarities in terms of, even who you choose to do business with how we think about purpose within Takeda. And so I best of luck with all that you continue to do. We're looking forward to the technology, and thank you for joining us. And to Jerry, thank you for your leadership as part of the Takeda executive team. And actually, I would say thanks to the broader TET for the culture that you are creating here for all of us, women and men, within Takeda. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.